Oh, I hope not. It was a very pleasant surprise rather than a red herring. I was going cap in hand and asking for hundreds of thousands, but 4 million is really something.
You don't think it's a case of two in the bush? He'd rather promise 4 million than stump up some state money for the Frederick Ash building?
Well, he wasn't going to pay it immediately, but he did suggest to me that immediately the Opera House is paid for, presumably from the Opera House lottery, that the proceeds, to some extent anyhow, would be devoted to the other parts of New South Wales, and the one requiring most urgent attention was Newcastle, not only for an art gallery, but for a suitable live theatre.
On television too, so there's no chance of a misquote of saying that the first money after the art gallery is 3 million for a job in Sydney.
Well, I hope he's changed his mind. I'm sure this is more important. Sydney's had more than a fair go, and the Opera House is a good example of it. There are thousands of people who will never see the Opera House, but there are thousands of people who would come to Newcastle to see shows and live in Newcastle, live in the region. It's a most important region. I think it's time they realised that.
Well, even if the council and the Lord Mayor welcomes this prospect of 4 million, how do you keep a cabinet minister to such a promise?
We have an appointment with him to discuss this matter in a few days' time, and my thinking, of course, is quite different now. I hope that we'll be able to put some sort of a tentative proposition to him, and I don't mind if he says it will be 2 years. It would take us 2 years to plan it, so we could go right ahead as long as we have his assurance that it is going to come in 2 years.
Well, last night you had some pretty caustic things to say about people who promise things for the future instead of doing them now.
Well, he was very firm in what he said last night, and I don't doubt him. I'd much rather believe him.
Well, we're hoping that they'll be able to either confirm or otherwise our feelings that that our action here is a proper one. We have the Minister for Transport, Mr. Morris, suggesting that it's important that the railway land, which has been given back to the city, or in the process of being given back to the city, the development of this is, I think he said, a town planner's dream. Well, the development of the whole area is a town planner's dream. It's really something that needs special attention and not just one particular part of the area.
Are you suggesting the setting up of a committee to plan for the whole of the East End and not just for the railway land?
That's right, and this was suggested by the town planner, Mr. James, before he left on an overseas tour.
Hoyts Theatres have decided not to renew the lease on the Civic because it is no longer an economic concern. And with that news, several groups have proposed a new development for the Civic Theatre. They want to convert it for use in live productions. The Elizabethan Theatre Trust is sending an expert to Newcastle probably next week to look at the Civic Theatre, see if it would be suitable for conversion, and discussions with the Newcastle City Council. A spokesman for the Trust told me today that they are extremely keen to put Newcastle on the theatrical map. They want a theatre in Newcastle which is suitable for international and metropolitan acts such as opera, ballet and musicals. J.C. Williamson's, one of the biggest theatre companies in Australia, have a long-standing interest in the theatre. They helped design it for live theatre originally in 1929, but they have not got much use of it since then. The General Manager of J.C. Williamson's, Mr. Sid Irving, would not comment on his company's interest in the Civic, although he did say that they would like a better venue for their shows in Newcastle. The ABC has used the Civic for its orchestral and other concerts. The Newcastle manager of the ABC, Mr. Tom Roberts, said that they have been happy with the Civic Theatre, although they will be holding further concerts, mainly the prom style of concert, in the University Great Hall. The ABC will continue to use the theatre after Hoyts move out. But will the Civic, if it is converted, be used by local companies as well as international and metropolitan groups? Newcastle theatre personality Colin Chapman thinks it definitely will. He thinks the Civic could become one of the best theatres in Australia, possibly in Southeast Asia. And he thinks it would be as good, if not better, than the new Her Majesty's Theatre the big J.C. Williamson company are building in Sydney for just on $3 million. Colin Chapman's estimate of the cost of conversions to the Civic, about $150,000. The Civic, he says, is ideal for the job of providing world-class standards for world-class entertainers. It has a 90 by 40 foot stage and seating for 1,600 people. I could not contact Alderman McDougall today because of his Matara engagements, but he has expressed a wish to have a suitable venue in Newcastle for metropolitan and international companies. Another Hoyts theatre, the Century at Broadmeadow, was sold several weeks ago, and it will draw the curtains for the last time tomorrow night. It has been bought by a Sydney development firm. But the end of 30 years tenancy in the Civic Theatre by Hoyts Theatres is a great opportunity to boost our cultural life, or so says City Alderman Reg Mason. He will raise the matter at a council meeting in the near future. He will also suggest the conversion of the Civic Winter Garden into an intimate style theatre, perhaps for those cinema buffs who regret the passing of the Civic Theatre.
Interests do you have?
Oh, mainly the beach. I love going down the beach in summer, just surfing mainly.
We believe you had a trip to Germany planned. What's happened to that now?
Well, I'm still going. I leave on the 27th of October. The state finals are on the 5th of October. If I do win that, I'll have to cancel my trip or postpone it for a year.
How long are you going to Germany for?
2 years for a working holiday.
Do you think you might have any hope of winning the state title?
No, I really and truly, I would like to go to Europe on my own, you know, not have sort of... I'd like to win, because I think it'd be a fantastic opportunity, but there will be 22 finalists, you know, so it'll be pretty tough.
Well, primarily I'd say it's not so much the coal exports, although they're important, but to make sure that we can get bigger ships in to discharge iron ore for the steelworks. Otherwise, BHP is going to find Newcastle a far too expensive place to make steel, and will definitely concentrate all their new investment elsewhere, Port Kembla, Western Australia.
How much of the whole thing is political?
Well, I think... I don't think you'd really say the public works have been political, but on the other hand, you can't really dismiss any of the idea that there could be some degree of bias in their conclusions. So they seem to be aiming for the cheapest, which I suppose is fair enough, but which is the offshore loader unloader, and yet I can't help dismissing that. I can't dismiss the feeling that this might not be the best. I think they're going for the cheapest, regardless of whether it's the most suitable plant. I mean, in that way, perhaps it could be political.
I can only see them ruining our Stockton Bight prawning ground, because the proposed coal loader is going to be right in the middle of our main prawning grounds. And seeing the plan in this morning's paper, well, I can't see it working, because I don't think that it's possible to keep the sand out of the proposed harbour.
Do you think they're ignoring the fishermen though?
Yes, well, we usually get ignored, in as much as we're only a drop in the bucket compared to the major industrial growth in this locality, plus the natural domestic development. But I suppose it'll be the same as everywhere else. We just have to move aside to let what they consider population growth and industrial expansion to take place. But the thing is, we haven't got many more places to move aside to.
A couple of high school fellas got caught in a rip on our northern end and got swept out past over in front of the rocks, and they were unable to get in.
What were the sea conditions like at the time?
Oh, pretty rough, very rough conditions, and was a very bad rip and currents.
And you went out with the flippers on to try and rescue them?
Yeah, I raced up my car and got the fins, swim out to the fellas, and we couldn't come back in against the rip, and we had to work our way up about 150, 200 yards up the beach.
What were you doing at the time, Walt?
While Les was out there with the chaps, the young chaps, I grabbed another mob of young chaps here with a reel to take out there. Now, by the time I reached Les and these young chaps, well, they were a little bit tired, but we formed a human chain then, didn't we? Now, after I put the hand signal up to haul in, they were hauling in. Now, there's 4 of us on that line together being brought in. They were hauling in too fast. Well, they dragged myself down once, plus the first chap I had. So end up losing him. Well, that meant that the other 3 were gone. So I put 2 hands up, but these young blokes down here didn't know the signals. Well, they had to race up to the ambulance room, look at a handbook to see what signals we were giving, but by this time it was too late. There was weed on the line, I was going under, and I said to Les, I said, I'll have to pull the belt. Well, then after that, well, it was just that the 4 of us were in the rip together. Well, we tried making headway against the rip by swimming to sea and out the rip to try to get across to the far bank. But in the meantime, one of the young chaps kept on getting cramps. Well, all the headway we were making at times, once this young chap got a cramp, we'd lose that and head back down north again.
How did you feel while you were out there once you'd dropped the belt, Les?
Oh, well, I realised, well, if we could get away from the rocks and just keep the fellas calm and I had one in each hand, with a strong hand grip on both of them and arm me back kicking, as long as we kept moving, as long as we keep away from the rocks and in green water, we were quite right. We'd eventually come back in.
Well, in the meantime, the police had come here and they were watching everything. But by this time, that's as time lapsed, that's over like, say, 40 to, say, an hour, 40 minutes to an hour. We'd moved our way right up south to the big bank off Shark Tower Rocks, where the big wash got us, and finally washed the 4 of us in.
Yeah, everyone's okay.
Oh yeah, the 2 young chaps were a little bit tired. Les and myself, well, we just had a little bit of a laugh about it, and of course we thanked our lucky stars too at the same time.
Well, Mr. Jones did inform me about this, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to speak to him in detail about it on Friday.
Now, there has been some talk that the minister responsible for this will be Dr. Jim Cairns. Do you think Mr. Jones might be able to give you enough at this stage to reach some conclusion?
Well, I wouldn't know exactly about that, but I understand there's a cabinet meeting today, and there may be some clarification on the responsibilities after this meeting.
Well, now, assuming that a new dock, a bigger dock, is necessary, what complications are there in it?
Well, it means a redesign, of course, because the dock will need to be lengthened and increased in breadth.
And then there has been some mention about bringing ships of up to 150, maybe 250,000 tonnes into the harbour. From your own knowledge of the harbour, is this feasible?
I'm not sure about the 250,000 tonnes, but it is possible to bring the larger ships in at reduced draft. There may be a length restriction, of course, on some parts of the harbour.
Now, so far as the existing floating dock is concerned, what's the current position about its life?
Well, we have had it surveyed recently, and the consultants from London have given it another 2 years if it's kept in the same state of repair that we've been maintaining it in the last 2 years.
And does this mean it's vital that at the end of 2 years we've got to have another dock?
It's very vital for State Dockyard and also for Newcastle that we get a new graving dock, yes.
Trade unionists today were, to say the least, sceptical about the proposal for an extra big graving dock. and I spoke to the Secretary of the Trades Hall Council, Mr. Keith Wilson, on the concern felt by employees at the dockyard about the very short life left for the floating dock.
The workers are concerned, very much concerned, so much so that already 2 recent inspections have been held over the safety of the dock. They realise the limitations and are very anxious to see the new dock being built.
Now, regardless of whether time was wasted on redesigning a new one?
Well, on this question, we're very sceptical of the propositions put up, because particularly when it's indicated recently in the press that Dr. Cairns will be the minister that is responsible for any such development in our district.
And do you think that Mr. Jones won't have a great deal of say in this?
Well, this could be so, as has been stated by Mr. Jones himself, that Mr. Cairns is the responsible minister, and it's already been indicated that there is a big dry dock being built or to be built in Victoria very soon.
This is the Western Port Bay proposal.
The Western Port Bay proposal, yes.
And of course Dr. Cairns comes from Victoria, doesn't he?
Dr. Cairns is based in Victoria. He'll have pressures, of course, from that area for immediate development in that field.
Well, now for some immediate action for our own proposed draving dock, what have you got in mind?
Well, we think the first thing that should be done is complete consultation with the trade union movement and the people in the Newcastle district, and this from a joint delegation and representation from the present federal government and the state government that have been already in agreement with the building of the dock. That's what we believe is immediate proposition.
But if it's privately owned, well then we may not have any right to a dedication of it unless whoever owns it wanted to dedicate it. But we can look into it and find out what's happening.
Mind, my Lord Mayor, I think great difficulty would be experienced in finding the owner, because it's certainly owned by no one.
Yes, sir. Mr. Anderson.
Is there any definite policy yet on the county in regards to the council on an increase in rates?
The estimates will go before the Finance Committee on the 30th of January, and following that, of course, it'll be a public document. You'll be able to study it at length, the same as we will be able to do it.
Has anything serious been given, or has any serious study, or anything been done in the last 12 months by this council in regards to investigating an alternative method of rating?
I can't tell you specifically exactly what the council resolved on it, but you will recollect that the government appointed a commission which has sat, I don't know whether it's still sitting, to investigate all aspects of local government. And you did have the opportunity, all citizens had the opportunity of coming before that commission, which was in Newcastle, for a day, if I recollect, or 2 days, and they heard submissions from the various councils. Now, I take it that when they have finished their investigation, they will publish a report of the evidence and make certain recommendations to the government. Just what they will be, I wouldn't have a clue. In the meantime, of course, Mr. Whitlam was very interested and has been for some years in assistance to local government. And this is the first time ever that the federal government has taken an interest in local government.
But I really would like to comment on all of the things said, really so far, particularly by Mr. Anderson and Mr. Kerridge and Mr. Fairley. And what I have to say is not unrelated, because I think it has to do with the problems we now face as a region and the concept of regional development and planning. And I think that this may be a solution for the lady who has moved here because of unemployment problems in country areas. And that's a very sad but real fact that families in the country are losing their children to the city because there is no employment for them there. And we in the city are fast losing our quality of life because of the way we have to live with congestion, traffic congestion, pollution, high density living, which brings associated problems of stress and so on. And I think that the solution to this is proper regional development and planning. And we will soon be very much involved in this, and as most people would know, the state is now being formulated into 9 regions, and we will soon have a Hunter District Advisory Council.
Look, thank you, Mr. Torres. Well, as you would know, the State Planning Authority set up a regional committee some years ago now, which brought forward the publication Prelude to a Plan. They put in a tremendous amount of work, mostly on the officer of the department basis. They did the groundwork, and then the committee examined all of their reports and criticised them. If they can start off on the right basis as the prelude to their plan, well, then their planning should be so much better. Now, if we disagree with what they have written there, and it's an exceptionally well prepared document, and it's well illustrated and graphic, if we say that's okay, well then they're starting on a good foundation. If we disagree, we should say in what direction we disagree, so ultimately they will start on a good foundation.
After the forum, I met the Lord Mayor and asked him just how successful this first venture was. How successful was it?
Well, I think it was worthwhile holding it. There were not as many as I thought might turn up, but I was quite happy that there were 30-odd people who came along, and it gave them an opportunity to really ask questions and give their opinion on different things.
Was there too much arguing about it, do you think?
No, that was the intention of it. The more they argued, the better I liked it.
Well, is it successful enough to hold another one?
Well, I think at least we should hold another one and just find out whether it grows or whether it goes down or what.
And when's it likely to be?
26th of February.
Well, there it is. We've had the first forum. The Lord Mayor thinks it's successful, and we're going to hold another one. But let's hope that there are more than 35 people at the next one to represent all the ratepayers in Newcastle.
Yvonne, as the defender of the New South Wales hardcourt women's title, how do you feel about playing in Gloucester?
Oh, really great, because I find I enjoy these type of tournaments, because me coming from the country myself, it's quite relaxing to be here.
Do you find the grass and the hardcourt much of a change for you?
Depends on what type of hard courts and that, but looking at these courts, they look quite good, and it's the type of courts I'm sort of used to playing on, particularly coming from the country and having the same type of courts. It looks really good.
Well, you've got Jan Lahane as possibly your strongest competitor in this one. Do you feel that there might be somebody else that can give you a bit of a go?
Well, there's a few other tennis players here who play a really good game, and that's Diane Fromholz and Chris O'Neill and a few others. So really it's not a tournament where I can relax completely while I'm playing, because I'll just have to be on my toes all the time, because I know that I just can't ease up at any stage.
Well, the best of luck in the tournament, and we'll hope you do well in Gloucester.
Thank you.
Why did you enter the children's pottery in the exhibition?
Oh, well, we had a show schedule, and I was looking through it, and they've had their pots sitting there, and I thought, to go to the show and actually see their pots on display might be nice for them.
Adrian, how many pots do you make? Do you make them very often? What do you like making? Ashtrays? And what about cats? Do you make cats like your sister?
No.
What's her cat called?
That.
When did you make your 2 winning ones?
10 weeks.
10 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Did it take you very long?
No, I 4 minutes.
Do you like making pots?
Yeah.
What about your sister? Does she like making them?
Yeah.
Do you like cats?
Yeah.
Do you like making pots?
No.
You show with your hands how you make pots. I'll hold it in. Show how you make them.
Does she make them very often?
Yes, it's the main hobby at the moment.
Why did you get them making pots?
Oh well, it's something to do. I find the clay easier to work with than plasticine, and they just get such a thrill out of seeing them go hard and look as if they've really made something.
Was she very excited when she'd learned she'd won?
Oh yes, she was quite overjoyed, weren't you, Mary?
Do you think she knows what she's done?
Oh yes, she realises. She doesn't say much, but she thinks she's marvellous at the moment.
What about Adrian? Was he disappointed that she beat him?
No, he got a thrill seeing that, you know, because she's not used to seeing Mary do things, and he thought it was great. What did you think of Mary winning, eh?
Doing.
We got down here at 6 o'clock to try and stop them from doing this by parking our cars next to the trees, and they got here at about 6:05, and bulldozers started moving in, you know. My daughter and my wife and I and a couple of other friends stood on the bulldozer. We stopped them after they'd pushed over a couple of trees, but then they moved up to the other end of the park and started moving into the trees on the footpath, and I saw a lady there standing right beside what do you call them, cross-cut saw thing, chainsaw, and you know, I thought it was pretty dangerous, and I thought, well, you know, pretty bad if she's prepared to do it, so I went and stood beside the same tree, and the police came along and told us to move on, and we didn't move on. We had stopped this fellow from cutting down the tree. The police came and told us to move on, and we didn't move on. We stood beside the tree, and then I was arrested, you see, and taken away to the city lockup. And I can assure you that that was the most disturbing and the most unpleasant experience.
Now, you've led a pretty constant fight to save these trees in Birdwood Park. Now, what is your reaction now to see them being chopped down here now?
How can I answer that question? You know, I really I've been completely overwhelmed. But, well, my daughters are hysterical almost, you know, because it's become a part of their life, the fight to try and stop Birdwood Park being destroyed. And they're young girls, you know, and they've got a bit hysterical, and that disturbs me. But there's just a complete and absolute total sense of frustration that the council would be so determined to go ahead and despite all of this fuss that's created, you see. And the bulldozer driver was absolutely prepared to move that bulldozer in amongst people. He really was. And he pushed it into a tree, you know, and branches were crashing down and people were milling about and just missed one of the people there by about 2 inches. And it is a fact that we tried to find out from the Lord Mayor last night at about 10:30 what was going on, and he said he didn't know. But unfortunately, Mr. Grayson, the engineer, said he didn't know either at about 10:15 last night, and told us if we wanted to find out when they were going to start in Birdwood Park, we'd have to ring the Commissioner for the Main Roads. Well, somebody knew, because at 6:05 this morning, as I said before, it was like an army manoeuvre. Bulldozers came in on the back of semis, men turned up on trucks, about 5 or 6 trucks turned up. The police were organised, they were alerted. And somebody, you know, was a very... And they started an hour and a half early. Instead of starting at 7:30 as is the normal time, these fellows were organised to start at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's one of the biggest manoeuvres that the council has ever put through, seemingly to subvert the aims of what the people in Stewart Avenue are trying to do, which was to get the council to have another look at it. Instead of saying, look, the best way is through the park, say, look, we don't want to go through the park, is there another way? Is there another alternative? And that's what we wanted them to do. But as soon as the Works and Planning Committee was on Tuesday night, and they moved into the park on Thursday morning. So they must have spent all day yesterday organising it, which is pretty sad, you know, it's just totally and absolutely sad. We were going to try and organise, you know, say 15,000, 20,000 signatures to a petition on the weekend. But that's a waste of time now because the council deliberately set out to trick us, you know, to underhandedly, not the council, but the people who organised this thing this morning, they deliberately set out to defeat us. And their superior organisation defeated us. But that's like declaring a state of war, isn't it? You know, it's like them against us. We're not trying to declare, we're not at war, we were trying to put another point of view to the council. You know, we're trying to help them make the place more beautiful.
Alderman Cummings, you're opposed to this move too, are you?
Yes. For the first time in my life, I'm ashamed to be on the Newcastle City Council.
Do you propose to resign over this at all?
No, I don't propose to resign. I just propose to go on fighting the same old battle. I've been fighting from the 4 years I've been on it. But this is the worst thing that's happened. We've had other smaller cases and other threats. In Islington, the Moreton Bay figs were threatened there, but this is the worst thing that's happened to me. I never thought I'd see this happen, and it couldn't happen in 5 years' time. 5 years' time, the climate wouldn't be like this. They wouldn't do it. They're using this park as cheap land. That's all it is, cheap land. And talking about a road that'll last 50 years. How can you talk about a road that'll last 50 years? You don't know what the traffic, you don't know what the transport will be in 10 years' time.
And when did you come down to the park? What time did you come here this morning?
Someone rang me, one of the residents rang me at 7:30 and I came straight in, but they had cut some of the trees.
Have you seen the Lord Mayor at all?
I asked the Lord Mayor did he know about it, and he said he didn't know about it. I just asked him here and he said he had no knowledge that it was going to happen. And I certainly had no knowledge that it was going to happen. In fact, we were discussing it on Tuesday night in council. It was coming up for discussion, and I thought surely there'll be nothing done till it's fully discussed by full council on Tuesday night. But obviously they've jumped in and started at 6 o'clock, organised everything. I never thought I'd see a 20 or 30 policemen here just to protect a tree.
I believe we can make a commencement during the next financial year, which commences on the 1st of July. Our government was gearing up to do this, despite our financial stringencies, but I'm encouraged and fortified by the fact that Mr Jones, I know, has this work on his priority list, and with the additional funds that are coming from the federal government, I see now no doubt about being able to make a commencement during the next financial year, commencing on the 1st of July next.
Well, how long would it take to do the work?
I think 2 to 3 years, and it would cost about $15 million.
Station now, when will that cease being used?
I'm not sure. We're having some discussions at the moment with the unions, and I will be disappointed if I can't say something firm within a fortnight, and I'd prefer to leave it until I can make a firm and final announcement.
Well, when it is finished with it, what's going to happen to it? Is it going to be pulled down or what?
This was the plan originally, to pull it down and make the ground available. Now, we may have to work in 2 stages. At this stage, I'm not sure, but I'll say something firm, I hope, during the month of March.
Well, simply because Newcastle City Council had already promised another charity this particular day, and they had to keep their word, and we were very lucky that they agreed to give us another date.
Well, is it a second best? You know, will you suffer by being different?
I hope not a bit, because I always feel Newcastle people will stick by Newcastle enthusiasts.
Well, is there a sort of target figure that you
Not actually in money, but I'm hoping that they'll let their pockets out, let any moths that are in there, and contribute to their heart's content.
Is it a valid question to ask? What happens to the money? Does it stay here? Or does it go
Quite. It's used, the whole of the money from New South Wales is used for a universal project. But I can say this in addition, 20% of our money will go to Newcastle hospitals as well.
So at least 20% of the money contributed will stay right here in Newcastle?
Oh yes. In addition to which we'll have all the benefits in regard to the experiments, in regard to the heart, because it is such an important thing.
The trouble started about 9:30 this morning as the iron hunter started coming into Nobbies. As a regular visitor to Newcastle, she is exempt from carrying a pilot to guide her into port. She ran aground on the first bar, and it took 4 tugs more than half an hour to pull her free. As soon as the hunter began making its way into the channel, it was obvious that the bow was holed. The forward end began to dip into the water, and about half a mile into the channel she ran aground again. At low tide, the vessel was sitting solidly on the bottom of the harbour in about 39 feet of water. The iron hunter is fully loaded with iron ore from Mount Newman, and if she is to be floated free, the cargo will probably have to be unloaded onto another ship. This could take days, and with no other ships able to enter or leave the port, Newcastle industry could be seriously affected. BHP called in divers this afternoon to examine the damage to the hunter, but the result of their search is not yet known. Shipping sources say that the bow is holed in 3 places and that the front 2 hulls are flooded, but so far I have been unable to contact BHP's Marine Superintendent, Captain Brady, to confirm this. The hunter is in no immediate danger, however, because she is well inside the breakwater and protected from the heavy seas which have been pounding the coast all weekend.
To make a sock out of? Go and ask Maud Mountain Goat. Her fur is only good enough for making socks.
Joey thought at last he found what he needed. But alas, Maud had